The boss of the BBC today issued a grovelling apology to the royal family and vowed to never again show Martin Bashir's Panorama interview with Diana, as it agreed to pay William and Harry's former nanny, Tiggy Legge-Bourke, substantial damages over lies told by the rogue reporter. The broadcaster apologised for the way Diana was deceived to secure the infamous chat and the subsequent impact it had on all their lives, after he tricked her with fabricated allegations that the nanny had an affair with the Prince of Wales. Tiggy Legge-Bourke received the payout after her solicitor told the court that the allegations caused serious personal consequences for all concerned. The BBC have also pledged to never provide the rights to the interview to other broadcasters. But the big question is, why has it taken 27 years for the BBC to finally admit that they were wrong, and for Bashir to be banished? Lord Spencer, who's Princess Diana's brother, of course, has said that he's still absolutely astonished that nobody's been charged with any kind of criminal offence here, because it seems incredible. The BBC are just saying, oh, well, we just won't show it anymore, but we might show extracts from it sometime in the future. I mean, you never get away with that anywhere else, Ian, would you?
No, absolutely you wouldn't. And, of course, for all the people involved that were seduced into taking part in this, whether it was Diana herself, her brother, various other characters that were the contacts, and all the rest of it. You know, this wasn't some shady tabloid Sicilian journalist from some, you know, glossy showbiz
going
magazine.
through the bin.
This was the BBC and Panorama, for goodness sake. You know, supposedly high-end stuff. This new kid on the block, Bashir, was the man that was going to make it all happen. And we know the whole thing was just a web of lies and deceit. It was outrageous. You know, you think about how newspapers were treated when things went wrong in some areas. And somehow the BBC, well, as you say, it's taken 27 years to get to this point. The only other issue I would add to it, I don't know whether all of this negates the entirety of the interview, however, because, you know, Diana did want to say a lot of what she had to say. The Morton book that kind of followed, a lot of this stuff was repeated in there as well. So the idea that it's never shown again, or...
No, it does,
you know,
doesn't it?
No,
I mean, clearly this is a severe breach of editorial standards. I'm very sad about the whole thing.
It is a breach.
Well, I worked at the BBC for a very long time, and I thought it was all about integrity. They have severely breached that. I think it's grubby, it's shameful. I'm embarrassed about the whole thing. And actually, when the BBC then said, we're extremely sorry, you ruined this woman's life for all of this time. It's just totally unacceptable. It was a web of lies.
And that's a really good point, actually. The effect that this had on Tiggy Legge-Bourke and her family. For years, they were notoriously private about this thing that had happened to them, never spoke about it. And the fact that the allegations were so deep, that she had an affair with Prince Charles, that she had an abortion for his child, that they were about to go on holiday together. And Martin Bashir quite clearly was playing on Princess Diana's insecurities, feeding them through to Al Spencer, and using all these fake documents, basically hoodwinking someone into pouring out their deepest, darkest secrets to nail this interview. And it is so shameful. And I also think that it is such a shame that Princess Diana, in her lifetime, didn't get to realise, or didn't realise what had happened to her to make her sit down and do that interview. I mean, the BBC knew in 1997 that this was a bit shady.
I mean, she was conned, Aisha, wasn't she? Straightforward con.
Look, absolutely. And I think I interviewed Jenny Bond today, the BBC royal correspondent, who said that she had met Diana after this interview and after these rumours were swirling, and Diana absolutely believed that this affair had taken place. She did, in fact, I think she had said something to Tiggy about, like, the baby and all that sort of stuff. So, but I just want to give a bit of grit in the oyster. I think the BBC behaved abominably. I think lots of newspapers also behaved. I think the whole press around that time behaved really, really badly. I kind of do agree with Ian on one point, though. I think that interview, despite the deception involved, I think Diana did have agency over it. So people who were close to her did feel that that was her chance to set the record straight. She got to say what she wanted. And I think if it hadn't been Martin Bashir, it would have been another media outlet.
Well, it might have been. And I, as a representative of the press at that time, I shall accept your apology later after I've said it. We didn't all behave terribly. But the thing is, I was on that night working for the Daily Express on the back bench as we were putting the paper together. And everybody knew what was coming, but they didn't quite know what was coming. And we had this first edition set up with her. And as soon as Panorama started, it was like you had to send the first edition. And it was, I will not go quiet quietly, which was what it opened with. And by the end of it, we were literally running around in disbelief. I mean, we had to tell people to go back to work because they were literally staring at it, going, there were 3 of us in this marriage. And you're right. I mean, all of that came out, and it was empowering for her.
It was. But what's also interesting, just as you're on the back benches of the paper and it's coming out, the same thing was happening in the palace. They knew nothing about it because remember, when he was brought in to do the interview, he was kind of hidden in the back. I mean, there was so much secrecy. There was obviously deception from his point of view, but she and her very small team of people went to great lengths to completely hide it from the palace as well.
But there's a very important point here. Her mental health, she was very vulnerable at this time.
She was.
That whole interview, she thought she was in control because of Earl Spencer saying to her, I think, you could probably go ahead with this interview. So because it was obtained by deception, I just think, just from a medical perspective, I'm very nervous about the fact you've preyed on a vulnerable woman, you've exploited her, and you're using it and you're turning it, and then she believes she can trust you and she tells you stuff that maybe she wouldn't have said. And of course, and the hurt for William and Harry as well.
It was absolutely playing on her insecurities, and Martin Bashir did that directly and indirectly through Earl Spencer as well. And while I agree with both of you that she did have some agency over the interview, and she definitely did, this was her chance to tell her side of the story that had long been told for her, but I think, like Dr. David said, because of the way it's obtained, playing on her insecurities, playing on her vulnerabilities, just doesn't sit well with me now, knowing what we know now.
But isn't there a wider point about the editorial stance of the BBC here? In the sense of, I mean, the BBC, when these things happen, the BBC eventually, in this case, it took over a quarter of a century, they come out and say, we're very, very sorry, we've got an inquiry running. If this happens anywhere else, the world loses its mind, and there's inquiries, and there's all sorts of government directives, and this has to happen. And the idea that this is settled on a few quid being given to somebody and we're really very sorry, I don't sense, and the BBC is not in a good place right now for lots of other reasons. I think the BBC need to do a lot more on this, if for no other reason, to reassure people that they're actually dealing with this going forward.
And I think that's true, but in the end, as well as saying that, well, maybe somebody else might have done the interview, I mean, she may never have said all of those things, and she may not have subsequently talked to Andrew Morton in the book if she hadn't been hoodwinked.
It's very difficult to prove the counterfactual, but I think given that she did that big interview with Andrew Morton, given that that interview was the big way of her reframing the story, and a lot of her close friends say that she sort of was quite empowered after that interview. But you're right, it was obtained in bad ways, and we'll never know what was going through her mind.
Yes.